Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunnavadhi Paschatya Deshatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Daita Chanda Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Daita Chanda Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Daita Chanda Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Makakaroti Vachalang Pangurangayate Giring Yadkipa Tamahang Bande Sri Gurung Dinatarinang Paramanandamadhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Kandavashi Mukunda Dasi Raghu Nandan Narahari Dasa Chiranjeev Sulochanan Esa Mahasakha Chaitanya Kripadham Prema Phala Phula Kore Jahatahadan Sri Kandavashi, Mukunda and his son Raghunandan were the 39th branch of the tree. Narahari was the 40th, Chiranjeev the 41st, and Sulochana the 42nd. They were all big branches of the all-merciful tree of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. They distributed the fruits and flowers of love of Godhead anywhere and everywhere. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Mukunda Dasa was the son of Narayan Dasa and eldest brother of Narahari Sarkara. His second brother's name was Madhava Das, and his son was named Raghunandan Das. Descendants of Raghunandan Das still live 4 miles west of Katwa, in the village named Sri Khanda, where Raghunandan Das used to live. Raghunandan had one son named Kanai, who had 2 sons, Madana Rai, who was a disciple of Narahari Thakur, and Vangsi Vadan. It is estimated that at least 400 men descended in this dynasty. All their names are recorded in the village known as Sri Khanda. In the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika, it is stated that the Gopi, whose name was Vrinda Devi, became Mukunda Das, lived in Sri Khanda village and was very dear to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His wonderful devotion and love for Krishna are described in the Madhya Līlā chapter 15. It is stated in the Bhakti Ratnakara chapter 8 that Raghunandan used to serve a deity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hey. Get Māyāpur, chapter 15. 15, maybe it's inside. Narahari Das Sarkar was a very famous devotee. Lochan Das Thakur, the celebrated author of Caitanya Mangala, was his disciple. In Caitanya Mangala it is stated that Sri Gadadhara Das and Narahari Sarkar were extremely dear to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But there is no specific statement regarding the inhabitants of the village of Srikhanda. Chiranjeev and Sulochana were both residents of Srikhanda, where their descendants are still living. Of Chiranjeev's two sons, the elder Ramchandra Kaviraj was a disciple of Srinivasacharya and an intimate associate of Narottam Das Thakur. The younger son was Govinda Das Kaviraj, the famous Vaishnava poet. Chiranjeeva's wife was Sunanda, and his father-in-law was Damodar Sena Kaviraj. Chiranjeev previously lived in the bank of the Ganges River in the village of Kumara Nagara. The Gaura Ganodesha Deepika, verse 207, states that he was formerly Chandrika in Vrindavana. So these are the Khandavasis, as referred to in Chaitanya pastimes. When the different devotees would come from Bengal to visit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that many were individuals, people who came from Navadvip. But there were some villages that were so celebrated because there were so many great Vaishnavas that came from there, that the people became referred to by their village. Srikhanda was one of those places, and the people coming from Srikhand became known as Khandavasis. Narahari Thakur, we mention him when we sing the Sandhya Arti every day. Kiba Narahari Adhikari Chamaratulaya. He was doing a Chamara Seva, fanning Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during the Mahaprakash. Līlā. He wrote the Krishna Bhajanamrita, which also gave the devotees some advice about Guru Tattva in a practical sense, many other practical things. Narahari was a protector of the Sampradaya after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left. He was one of the few devotees that survived for a period of time, and said that when Srinivasacharya had come down from Vrindavan and had the books stolen and then had recovered the books from the Biranbir Bikram Maharaj, at that time that Maharaj wanted to accept him as his guru, wanted to accept Srinivasacharya as a guru, but to become a guru of a king or to be the Raj Guru of a kingdom meant that one had to be a grihasta. Because in order to be a guru of a king, you had to also guide him in his personal affairs. And kings are grihastas, they had to be grihastas. So that meant you had to, it was a custom, to sit in the royal court was not appropriate for a sannyasi. So he went and asked Narahari Thakur what he should do. And Narahari Thakur told him that it was more beneficial for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's preaching if he became the Raj Guru, and told him he should get married. Although he was already blessed by Radharani, had no material desire as such, but he took it as a devotional service. So he took the Grihastha ashram, he became the Raj Guru. We're going to visit these places after Gaur Purnima, to Srikhanda, to Vishnupur, where Srinivasacharya was the Raj Guru, to Jajigram, where Srinivasacharya was preaching from and living from, and Srikhanda. Another important aspect about Narahari Sarkar was that when he disappeared, it was just around they had a big festival for celebrating his disappearance on the Gaur Purnima day. So that was the first Gaur Purnima festival, the first festival, you can say, that when all the Vaishnavas gathered together. Might not have been. Because after Mahaprabhu left, all the devotees were overwhelmed with separation. And for a long time, practically everyone was paralyzed. Now when Narahari Sarkar left, and he was such one of the last direct associates, one of the last major direct associates to be in the planet, it was felt by everyone as a very great loss. So then they all gathered there and observed a very big festival for Narahari Thakur's Tirubhav. So at that time, devotees who normally didn't venture out or great associate, they also came together, and it was something very historic. It was like a landmark festival. And that set the inspiration for Narottam Das Thakur to have the first really big festival on the occasion of Gaur Purnima at Keturi, which is on the bank of the Padma River. It was also managed and coordinated by Srinivasacharya. That's in Bangladesh now. So, these are all important historical aspects of our disciplic succession. Brinda Devi personally appeared and was living in Srikhanda. So there are many great devotees there. Mukunda, Raghunath, Narahari, Chiranjeev, Sulochan. They're all their descendants, their disciples. Even to this day, they have an annual festival at Srikhanda, where thousands and thousands of people attend. It's one of our goals that from Māyāpur we should attend all these big Vaishnava gatherings and preach there. There are several. There's another one, of course, at Panihati, the Chiradahi festival. Month of Josta in May. Off and on we've attended over the years. Like that, there's different festivals. There's a festival we talked about last night, Govinda Ghosh's festival, which we've not attended, but we went to at least visit this year. These original deities that were worshipped by these associates, they're still there in these places. Even after 400, 500 years, they're still maintaining the deity worship. The original descendants are still there. You know, sometimes we see a temple and we think, well, our ISKCON temple is in Vrindavan or Māyāpur or some other London or some other temple in the West has a nicer deity worship. And it may be true that our Shringar or the standard of dressing and puja is very nice in the ISKCON temples. One thing you have to understand, of course, is that they are worshipping the same deity for 400 to 500 years. And that itself is says a lot. Of course, we like to see the standard revived up to the highest standard. We know that how sometimes in some temples they have a huge population of devotees. Then after some time the population decreases, and then it's a struggle even to get pujaris to do the worship, keep up the standard. So the fact that somehow or another they kept up the worship for so many years is a very big credit. And these deities become places of pilgrimage for all the devotees. How everyone was connected. Srinivasacharya would go to Srikhanda and take instruction from Narahari Thakur. Chiranjeev lived in Srikhanda, and Chiranjeev's eldest son was Ramchandra Kaviraj, and he took initiation from Srinivasacharya. And he became almost a constant associate of Narottam Das Thakur. So like this, they were all linked together. Ramchandra Kaviraj was a very dynamic preacher. And he and Narottam practically turned the whole Vaishnava Sampradaya, Vaishnava Samaj, the Brahmana Samaj, Smarta Brahmana Samaj, upside down. In those days, the Brahmanas were of two types. There was the Vaishnava Brahmanas, and there was the Brahmanas known as caste Brahmanas or Smarta Brahmanas. The Smarta Brahmanas, they didn't respect Vaishnavas. They thought unless you were born in a family of Brahmanas, couldn't be a priest, couldn't do anything. So Lord Nityananda started to appoint different gurus and acharyas from different castes who were great. He named some were different. So Narottam Das Thakur, he was actually born in a Hare Krishna. He was born in a so-called Kshatriya caste, or Kayastha, some people say Kayastha. He was a king's son, so was Caius the king, apparently. Anyway, he was not a Brahmana by birth, but he was a liberated soul. He was especially blessed by some goats, and it was a couple of weeks before the Durga Pujas. How everyone was connected. Srinivasacharya would go to Srikhanda and take instruction from Narahari Thakur. Chiranjeev lived in Srikhanda, and Chiranjeev's eldest son was Ramchandra Kaviraj, and he took initiation from Srinivasacharya. And he became almost a constant associate of Narottam Das Thakur. So like this, they were all linked together. Ramchandra Kaviraj was a very dynamic preacher. And he and Narottam practically turned the whole Vaishnava Sampradaya, Vaishnava Samaj, the Brahmana Samaj, Smarta Brahmana Samaj, upside down. In those days, the Brahmanas were of two types. There was the Vaishnava Brahmanas, and there was the Brahmanas known as caste Brahmanas or Smarta Brahmanas. The Smarta Brahmanas, they didn't respect Vaishnavas. They thought unless you were born in a family of Brahmanas, then you really couldn't do anything spiritual. Couldn't be a guru, couldn't be a priest, couldn't do anything. So Lord Nityananda started to appoint different gurus and acharyas from different castes who were great devotees, and he named 64 Mahantas. Some were Kshatriyas and some were different castes. So Narottam Das Thakur, he was actually born in a Hare Krishna. He was born in a so-called Kshatriya caste, or Kayastha, some people say Kayastha. He was a king's son, so was Caius the king, apparently. Anyway, he was not a Brahmana by birth, but he was a liberated soul. He was especially blessed by Radha and Krishna and the 6 Goswamis. Narottam Das Thakur was very special, so similarly, Ramchandra Kaviraj was a very great preacher and Vaishnava. And they were living in Keturi. There's a pastime how one time they were walking to the Padma River, and there they saw that there were 2 very nice Brahmana young men, so youths, who were taking with some servants some goats and some buffalo. It was a couple of weeks before the Durga Puja, so it seemed like they were going to take them to be offered as an animal sacrifice to Durga. And Ramchandra Kaviraj mentioned to Narottam Thakur that these 2 would be very nice candidates to become devotees of the Lord. He said, but they're obviously caste Brahmanas, and if we would go to speak to them, they might not listen to us. So then they made a plan, and they started to talk with each other in a mock argument where one would challenge the other would answer that would say that well, I'm going to offer these some goat to Goddess Kali or Durga. What's wrong with that? This is, after all, mentioned in the Vedas. It's one of the sacrifices. Oh, that's a karma kanda sacrifice. You can do that. But that will not help you to get liberation. And that is not the most pleasing to Durga, or that is not actually the highest purpose of life. Actually, what we are meant to do is do everything for the pleasure of the Lord. That is called the nivritti marg. And all these other sacrifices are on the pravritti marg. They're simply some license for doing forbidden things, restricting them so that one will not be taken down to hell. Like that, they discuss so many things like that. They say, well, unless one's a brahmana, they cannot understand spiritual life. And they say, well, the brahmana has got 12 qualities. But the Vaishnava has got 13. That actually, if a brahmana doesn't worship Vishnu, then they are considered fallen into pieces. So then the two boys say, you know, what are we doing anyway? All the stuff our father is teaching us is just being defeated by this. Actually, this must be Narottam Das Thakur and Ramchandra Kaviraj. Why don't we should learn from them what is the Shastra, what do our parents know? They went and they offered their obeisances and they asked, you know, who these two saints were. And then Narottam introduced, this is Ramchandra Kaviraj, this is Narottam Das. They say that they surrendered and said, please train us. And Shastra, we want to learn from you. So what about your goats and your buffaloes? And then they went back and told the servants, you take these and let them free. What do you mean let them free? What about your father? He told you to buy all these for offering to Durga. How can you tell us, listen, when you're under me, you let them free and you go and tell my father, we're not coming now. We're staying here with Narottam and Ramchandra Kaviraj. We'll come later. You just do what you're told. That's the thing in India. If you're a servant, you gotta do what you're told. Usually the foreign devotees, they come and they treat the servants like they're equals, and then they get spoiled and steal from you and so on. So anyway, they let it be known, look, you're hiring you, you're our servant, so you do what we told you. When you get back to our father, then you do what he tells you. Then they stayed and they learned so many Vaishnava tattvas from Narottam and Ramchandra Kaviraj. And they actually had a love and faith for both of them. They were probably equal. So it was they decided they wanted to take initiation, but they couldn't decide who. Because for each, they both were the same. So then they decided that one would take from one and one from the other, and accept the other one as Siksha Guru. Like one would take from Narottam but take other as Siksha Guru, and one would take from Ramchandra Kaviraj and take the Narottam as Siksha Guru. So, but they took initiation like that, but they actually respected both equally. they thoroughly understood the science of Krishna consciousness. Then they went to visit their father. So they came to see their father, and they had the Vaishnav Tilak, Sika, Kunti Mala, Japa Mala. So when the father, whose name was Shivananda Bhattacharya, a famous smarta Brahmin, he saw his two sons walk in dressed as Vaishnavas. He became so angry, he started shouting at them, Kula Dham! Kula Dham! Disgrace of our dynasty! You have spoiled everything. What, you're coming before me dressed as a Vaishnava? Wipe off that tilak. What is this? Fanaticism. Wasn't so easy to be a Vaishnava. In those days and now it's sometimes difficult also. Sometimes the parents, they also heavy out the children. They don't understand. The children, so then they started to defend, no father, you don't understand. And what? You're telling me? Who are you? You are my children, I won't listen to you. They tried to preach to him, but he was totally unwilling. He said, no, I won't let you speak to me. And he brought some pandits and told them, you please convince my children. They've been misdirected. They've been brainwashed by those Vaishnavas who are not even Brahmanas, and they're given initiation to Brahmanas. See the disgrace. What's going to happen to the whole Varnashram system when non-Brahmanas are initiating Brahmanas? So you please straighten them out. They must reject all these bogus gurus and take a Brahmana and again start to worship the Devi. So the Brahmana Pandits that went over to speak to them, but the two Vaishnavas had been so nicely trained up by Narottam and Ramchandra Kaviraj that they convinced the Brahmana Pandits and they all accepted Vaishnavism. This made the Shivananda Bhattacharya more angry. He said, what, these foolish Pandits here, they don't know anything? How they could become Vaishnavas? So then he was a personal friend of the famous Mithila Digvijay. What was his name? Mukunda or something? Madhav Das, something? Forget. It's from Mithila Desh, famous Digvijay, defeating everyone. So he sent a message, you have to come and defeat my children. He sent a message back, what I'm going to do, coming and speak to some of your kids. It's beneath my dignity. You get some big Vaishnava Acharya to come, I can defeat him, but just to talk with some children, well, it's not suitable. So there was one Bhagavan Acharya there, who was a well-respected Vaishnava. So he agreed to talk with the Mithila Digvijay. So then he came down to establish that Brahmanism was greater than Vaishnavism. But then in the discussion, without a very short time, Bhagavan Acharya, he quoted so many verses from the Vedas that someone had to be a Vaishnava, and being a Vaishnava had all the qualifications of being a Brahmana. And they could do all the functions of a Brahmana. And this Mithila Digvijay, actually he didn't know this, he didn't know anything about Vaishnava Dharma. So when he was confronted with these Vedic verses, he didn't have an answer. He got bewildered. So he admitted defeat. So normally the system was, if you get defeated, you should surrender to the other person, accept him as guru. But this Digvijay, he started a new thing in Kali Yuga. He said, okay, no, I'm no longer Digvijay. I'm disgraced. I'm no longer undefeated. So now, I'm going to simply wander as a mendicant doing tapasya. So he became neither here nor there. No longer did he remain as in his Brahmana duties, neither did he accept Vaishnavism. He started the third way. False ego speculation. Whimsical action. When that happened, then Sivananda Bhattacharya, he became so upset that he practically went cracked. It was too much. The biggest Pandit in the whole eastern India, Mithila, was next to Navadvip in terms of its stature. He was at that time biggest Pandit. He got defeated by quite an ordinary Brahmana, Vaishnava, rather ordinary, not such a renowned Vaishnava, quite well-established Vaishnava, not so famous as Narottam or anyone. And he became like a nervous breakdown. So anyway, his sons couldn't stay there anymore. They went back and went with Narottam in Kaituri. Here's Krishna Kirtan Das, a brahmachari preaching in Bangladesh. He sometimes goes to the festival they have at Kaituri village, Narottam Thakur's Sripat. And he goes to many other holy places in East Bengal. If sometime you like to take a pilgrimage or help in some preaching, he has very, very big pandal programs with thousands and thousands, maybe 20,000, 10,000 people coming. And he always likes to take one or two devotees from foreign countries, because the people there, they like to see the devotees who are coming from different countries, whether any of the continents. So those holy places are still there. Actually, when Lord Caitanya went to East Bengal, it said everyone he met, whether they were Brahmana, whether they were Sudra, whether they were lower than a Sudra, he would tell all of them to chant Hare Krishna. Hari Bol! And they would all start to chant Hare Krishna. And then he would embrace them, and they would have love for Krishna. So Lord Caitanya, when he went by the Padma River, one very big river in Bangladesh, which is coming off from the Ganges. So that time there was big ghats, and the people bathing there, so they were like devas, just like demigods. Ladies would bathe in one ghat and men in the other, and they're all nicely dressed and very gentle people. So Lord Caitanya also went bathing there. It said that people who bathe in the Padma River, chanting Hare Krishna, those who are the devotees of Krishna, who don't commit Vaishnava aparad, they get love for Krishna. But people who bathe in that river who are Vaishnava aparadis, they don't get love for Krishna. They lose they lose things, good karmas and things. So, for the devotees, it's a very auspicious place to bathe. For Vaishnava aparadis, it will create catastrophe. So, sometime in Bangladesh, there's catastrophe, especially amongst those who are Vaishnava aparadis. In this way, there was a lot of struggles to establish Caitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. And so when we go in Western countries and you find that you have struggles there also, some people are being attacked by anti-cult, some people are attacked by government, some people being oppressed by various kinds of bigotedness. Different institutionalized religions are, established religions don't want to let the Hare Krishna movement expand, so they create obstacles. These are all quite ordinary for the course, quite normal historically in the movement of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. There were so many obstacles they had to face. In those days, the Brahmanas were the established religious force. Lord Chaitanya faced problems from them. Narottam Das Thakur faced a problem. But then after a while, they had brought over the Brahmanas to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Now there are so many families, like in Navadip, so many Brahmana families are there who have all accepted Vaishnavism. In Shantipur, in so many places. So, we're going to visit some of these places in West Bengal this year. And in the future years, we'll be going also to the different places. We're trying to establish temples in the holy places, or at least to contribute something to keep them fixed up. In Bangladesh, at the birthplace of Pundarik Vidyanidhi, we have a temple. Also nearby the birthplace of Rupa and Sanatana. In a place where they were living as a child, we have a temple. And like that, we're going to different festivals there, and here we're going. So eventually we hope to preserve not only Navadip Dham, but also Gaur Mandal in east and west sides of the Bengal. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Any questions? You have a question?
What should be our special prayer to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu?
What do you think? What's the greatest thing that Lord Chaitanya can give?
Krishna prema.
Haribol! What does the devotee want but pure devotion, never to be separated from the service of the Lord? To be able to fulfill the desires of Guru and Krishna, Guru and Gauranga. Any other question? Chaitanya Rupa Devi Dasi here. A key. No, no, in Srikhanda.
Srikhanda. Where's that?
Srikhanda is near Katwa.
Okay.
It's only 2 hours, 2.5 hour drive from Māyāpur.
It seems that a lot of different devotees were born at distances from the actual birth site, whereas in Vrindavan, Tulsi Devi or Benta Devi is very close to Radha Krishna all the time, but in Māyāpur, the associates, like Pundarik Vijayanidhi was born in what's now Bangladesh. There's a lot of devotees born at distances. Why is this? They're not born so close to Vrindavan.
Because Lord Caitanya is so merciful. He sent his devotees throughout the Gaur Mandal so that they could deliver more people. So just like the whole village of Srikhanda were Vaishnavas, because Pundarik Vijayanidhi took his appearance in a distant place like Chattogram, so the people there now, they have big festivals every year for Pundarik Vijayanidhi. They go to his birthplace. Also, Mukunda Datta and Vasudev Datta appeared in that area. So that gave a special mercy to those people. Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata appeared in Srihatta. So did Srivas Thakur, Advaita Gosai, Murari Gupta, to name a few. So by appearing in these different corners of Gaur Mandal Bhumi, and by this has given a lot of mercy to the people. So there's annual festivals, there's remembrances, those. It's one of the plans of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. They all gathered together at Navadvip at that time, but they were born in different places. After some time they'd go back and they'd preach in their birthplace to the local people, or they'd live there and establish temples and things. Or even now, people are celebrating again Advaita Gosai's appearance day sometime in the month of Chaitra. Loha, what's it? Advaita is Saptami, but on some they told me there's a big festival in that birthplace. I don't know if it matches up with the Saptami. Because Saptami is before just last month. At the same time, when I was just there in Srihatta, they told me it was sometime in the month of Chaitra. That's already Chaitra passed. Chaitra Falgun. So maybe that was the one, the Saptami. And that time there was like hundreds of thousands of people gathered there. Punatirtha. So there's a verse somewhere where it mentions that Lord Caitanya has sent his associates in different places just to give the mercy to those people in those different places. He could have had them all appear here, but by having them appear around, that's spread the mercy out. Any other question? Muni Vyasadev Das Brahmachari. Today we observed Smriti Sabha for our departed disciple Ram Gopal Das Brahmachari. Yes.
What is the role, the behavior, what is the role, the behavior, the contribution of the Vaishnavas in the Varnashram system? I have heard that Vaishnavas are transcendental to the Varnashram system, so I want to know if there is some contribution, some duty of the Vaishnavas to the Varnashram system.
What is the duty or contribution of the Vaishnavas to the Varnashram system? Of course, in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's days, he said to loosely follow Varnashram. He also preached about a Daiva Varnashram. Prabhupada wanted to create a Daiva Varnashram where, for the sake of organizing the society, there would be especially the ashrams and some social orders. Identify as Vaishnava first, and not to be an identity thing, but it'd be rather just an organization thing that if you're acting as a grihastha, you have certain duties. If you're acting as a brahmachari, you have other duties. If you're a sannyasi, you have other duties. If you're living in a temple and you're acting as a brahmana, you should live in a certain way. But these were all on the basis of serving Krishna, and that not that one role was more important than another, or that one person was greater than another, but that everyone being devotees are all dear to Krishna. So it's a big topic, but we see now in ISKCON is we're having so many devotees who are living outside the temple. And it's important that we establish a Varnashram so that who's acting as a Brahmana, they fulfill their role to help the others who are acting as non-Brahmanas. But everyone's a Vaishnava, but say someone's making money, working, then it's their duty to give a portion of their income, as Prabhupada said, to the temples and to the maintain the Brahmanas so there's like a whole need of a proper reciprocation. So what is this but Varnashram? This is all part of Varnashram. The difference being is that not that one is greater than the other, but everybody is a Vaishnava, everyone's a devotee of Krishna. But how we should act with our income, with our day-to-day activities, this is to give us a guideline. So in the future, Prabhupada predicted that in the world there'll be an adaptation of Varnashram, a simplified form with a spiritual format based on being a devotee of Krishna. Hare Krishna. Last question. Yes.
Somewhere along the line, during Vishwanath Thakur's time, more like kind of Madhurānandi. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur had revived the preaching and the whole thing was set back into house of nine. So I was just interested in knowing, is there any specific reason why Lord Caitanya arranged that during that specific time during Vishwanath Thakur, that time extensive preaching was not going on. As far as the kind of preaching which Bhaktivinoda Thakur envisioned or anything like Narottam Das Thakur did wasn't going on at that time.
Well, I'm not 100% clear on the exact period where things deviated, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he clearly said that at a certain point in time, Kali was really upset. That he was, in his own yuga, he had become exiled. He became sidelined because of all the preaching. So he wanted to take care of these Vaishnavas somehow to get back, get Kali Yuga back into full swing. And so at that time, Sukracharya agreed to help out Kali because apparently he had a grudge against Vishnu. When Bali Maharaj gave the donation of water, 3 drops of water to Vamana Deva, and gave the boon of 3 steps of land, at that time Sukracharya had told him not to do it, but he disobeyed his guru to worship Krishna. So Sukracharya, with his mystic power, he took the form of a fly, and he entered into the kamandalu of Vamana Dev so that the water wouldn't pour out. So when he tried to pour the water into Bali Maharaj's hand, it wasn't coming. So of course Vishnu knows everything. He took one kusa grass and held the kamandal out, pop, poked it in there like cleaning it out. In doing so, one of the eyes of Sukracharya got poked out. So when he took back his form as a human being, he had one eye. Other eye became blind. So he was still angry at Vishnu for poking his eye out like that. For such a minor offense as clogging up his kamandalu. What he thought was minor. So he told Kali that I'll help you. I'll take birth as a Rupa Kaviraj and I will introduce Sahajism, where everybody will become into Bhajananandi and become into so-called Bhajan, into Sahajism, which is really not Bhajananandi, but it's really Bhojananandi. That they're trying to enjoy the rasa rather than actually please Krishna. So we know that historically at some point the whole Sahajism entered into Vaishnavism and it destroyed, spoiled everything. And only a thin line of acharyas were able to keep the real philosophy alive. Hare Krishna.